All right, let's get right into this. We're gonna do a little Twitter scrolling. The Gorilla Glue thing happened. People are gonna talk about that in the history books probably. But her hair's back to normal, so there's that. Let's see. All this stuff's pretty old. Twitter is confusing to me. I gotta go to tweets and replies, I think. I don't know if it's there. Alright, we're gonna watch something real quick. Shout out to One Step Too Far. What a fucking G. Oh, Spez is here too. Cool. Oh, he gone. So, we'll see. Let me just mute that real quick. I just want to listen to the first little part of this. Oh, let's turn it down a little bit, probably.
You can't abort the retort!
Not even close. You can't even get close. Thank you, Flo. I appreciate you, man.
Take it easy.
Everybody loves watermelon and fried chicken.
Fuck yes. Shout out to One Step Too Far. On Twitter at the number one step underscore TOO far. You know, somebody with a username like that, they've received the banning. What's up, Spez? Can you hear me?
Yeah, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I am doing good. Another day, another dollar.
Heard that. Have you been working through the old PDEM, the old pandy?
I don't know what that means.
Have you been working during the pandemic?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I've got like pretty good job security and everything. So, 50 hours like every week. So
You're
it's a little
essential.
strange, but I'm what?
Are you were considered essential?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it would be a lot of people without healthcare without people like me. So
Well, what will we ever do, right?
I know.
Shit's so expensive. You know, like if I get hurt, I'm like, how much is this gonna cost? I'm not even considered really with like, oh no, I hope I get back to normal health. I'm just like, oh, can I avoid the emergency room?
Yeah, it depends. The out of pocket's like astronomical, but some companies like take care of like all that. Like they'll just pay for all that. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, some people have sweet benefits. I remember reading a story one time about an old lady who, or maybe an insurance agent told me this, I can't remember, but there was this lady and she had bought a lifetime worth of health insurance back in like the 70s or 80s, and the health insurance company was trying to back out of it, and she like fought him on it, and she has health insurance until she's dead, and it's like completely covered everything, and this company has to pay it.
Yeah, that's usually not the type of deal that you want to make. Usually they have pensions, and then they've just got like astronomical amount of funds like in those like spending accounts and stuff. But they don't do that anymore. They're definitely not doing that for our generation. It's only the old timers that really get that stuff. So
Yeah, I suppose they need it the most. Get their life alert and applesauce and whatnot.
yeah, pretty much. Fun times. How about you? How's working outdoors?
It's shitty. But you know what? I do what I can. My allergies are activated today because I was mowing a lawn essentially for 7 hours today. It was bad news.
Yeah, that's brutal. Like dealing with like grass and grass clippings. I did farm work once in college, and like we moved like stacks of hay, like in a barn, and like I just exploded. Like I couldn't stop sneezing. My whole face was just melting with like water coming out of like every pore. Like my eyes were watering, my nose was just pouring. It was kind of embarrassing, but it was like whatever. And then there's like these like kids that have done this stuff their whole life. They're just like running laps around me doing this. So yeah, I get the whole grass thing.
It sucks when you're, well, in a barn. I would assume it's even worse. Enclosed space, there's only so much ventilation you can get. And hay, I know hay for some people is just bad news.
It's dry. It's essentially, well, it's not grass, but it's essentially like dried grass. Like that's the best way of like thinking. Like think about all those particles that get up in the air. And like then it's like in an enclosed environment. So like yeah, I was not used to that. I had done like retail and countdown drawers and stupid shit like that, not farm work. But the pay was pretty good, so I took it. And I was poor at the time, so.
Did you live on the farm or did you show up every day?
No, it was like a one-time thing. One of the guys I worked with at another like part-time job on campus, like he hit me up on it. He's like, "Hey, do you want to do this? Like they'll pay us like 18 an hour." I'm like, sure. It was like a quick $80 for like 4 hours worth of work, pretty much. And then they gave us then they tried to give us like a bunch of like farm food too. And I just thought that was like something that went on in the movies, and I'm like, oh no, that's real. Like they try to pay you in food too. So I was like,
That's
okay.
funny. Did you take any of the food?
Yeah, they gave us like cranberries or something like that. No,
What
not
is
cranberry, cherries.
Cherries.
Yeah, a bag of cherries to go. There's a bunch of other strange stuff, and it was like, no thanks, like gourds. It's like
Yeah.
who moves like bales of hay and is like, yeah, like give me a gourd.
Let me tuck into this pumpkin squash real quick. That's what I was gonna say. Cranberries is a fucking awful payment,
Yeah, I mean, unless you really wanted cranberries, but no, they were like cherries, and the crazy thing is that they trained sheepdogs there. Like that was one of the things they made money on. So like they had sheep there just for the purpose of like teaching the dogs, and like there was all these like Australian shepherds and border collies, and that was like their big thing. And then they sold these dogs to like farmers and stuff. They were ready to go.
That's wild. I bet those dogs are expensive as hell.
Yeah, that's farm country for you though. It's a whole nother world. It really is. Than like compared to like what most people deal with like towards cities and stuff. So
Yeah, it sounds like it would be, an experience, but I don't know. After a while, I feel like it would be the same experience that you would have in a city where you feel like it's kind of closing in around you. If you just live on like a 1,000-acre farm, just the wild, vast expanse of nature. It's looming all the time.
yeah, I'm sure it is. I think tornadoes though, for like a lot of people, at least in America, kind of keep it lively. It's like you never
Keep it
know. It's
exciting.
like a great big middle finger of God gonna come out of the sky and fuck the whole town up or something like that. I don't know. That would be the only way you'd get me to like be out on a farm. It's like the possibility of seeing a giant tornado. I love
That would
tornadoes.
do it. Man, I used to watch there was I don't know if it was like the Storm Chasers TV show or if it was just a spin-off for some streaming platform. But that was pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I always loved it when I was a kid. I always wanted to see one when I was a kid when like everyone else was like, "You're crazy, like get in the basement." Because like we would occasionally like where I live, like we're in Tornado Valley kind of. But yeah, we can get some stuff, so I've always just thought it was crazy. Like the sky gets black and like there's like a big spiraling cloud of doom that comes out of it. Like hell yeah, sign me up. That's metal. That's awesome.
I
So
I was doing a job where they told me if you stay at this place while this, storm is going on, we'll pay you basically 24 hours a day while you're there, and even if you're sleeping, we're still going to pay you, which they tried to back out on, and I accepted because I wasn't going to argue over like an extra $500 or $600 because I didn't sleep that much anyways because I was busy doing shit. But right when the power to the place went off, I had to go into this boiler room, and generators now have automatic transfer switches. When the power goes out, they just kick on. And that's why a lot of places, if you've been in a place with a generator that's like commercial and the power goes off, it goes off, and then a few seconds later the lights kick back on and you might be able to hear the generator. Well, this was like a really old generator. So I went into the boiler room and I'm doing like the manual transfer switches to get it to turn on. We had it set up so that you wouldn't have to actually go outside and do anything, which was pretty necessary. But as I'm doing this, I just hear like a bunch of noise, and I was like, okay, whatever. And I get it turned on, I get the lights going. I'm trying to figure out if the air conditioners are gonna work or not. I wish I'd have known this in the past. They wouldn't, because a tornado had just come through and like ripped all the doors off of the compressors on the roof for the air conditioners. But I was like almost outside when this big ass tornado came, and I just remember walking around checking everything out and just seeing all the trees and shit completely down. I was like, oh man.
yeah, they're pretty crazy. I mean, obviously you don't want one like, destroying your whole life or anything, but we always had like smaller ones, so we never really had to fear about like the big ones. So I don't know, like that was always my thing. Like I just thought they were like crazy, like what they were and stuff, and like we had them like mostly like centered right here in this part of the world. But yeah, they're kind of nutty. Like
If I'm not mistaken,
some of
there
the
was a fucking water spout in my area too, where there was like a tornado over a body of water of some sort, and it just like spouted up.
yeah, that'll happen. It happens quite a bit, but they usually don't do much from there. But
It's just so
yeah,
weird to see.
they are. You know what's really cool that I've done like since I've been on like lockdown? Those like Joplin tornadoes and like the Morris one, I believe it was. If you remember, those were like big ones that
I
they
was
had
gonna
like
say,
3-4 years ago.
yeah, the
They've
biggest
got
one I
all
can
the high
remember was
def.
at Missouri.
Well, there's people that like followed that stuff with like 4K cameras, and like you can just see the damn thing like the whole time while it's just tearing apart like town after town. Like there's one guy who videotaped following the thing for like an hour and just watched his whole town, his neighbor's town, just get completely destroyed, and you're just watching everything get ripped up in like fine detail. It's pretty crazy.
Were there any drone shots, or is that like not viable because of how windy it is, I imagine?
I mean, technically helicopters are drones,
Yeah, I guess.
and like there has been instances where they're up there, but they're not anywhere near the funnel. Like they're easily like 5-6 miles out.
Yeah. Well, that's the
But
thing with those big ass tornadoes. It kind of, you've got this image of a tornado in your head, where it comes down to like a fine point and it's just kind of moving. But those big ass tornadoes, they're like extremely wide, so you can't really get into too close of a proximity to them. The ones
yeah,
that
and
will
if they
tear up
have
entire
enough breathing
towns.
room and they're just being fed properly, like which is like what happened with Joplin and everything. Um, those are really crazy because like Joplin, you watch. I think it was Joplin. There's a couple of them. Joplin, you watch start is like nothing, like a water spout, you would think. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you don't even notice it. It like gradually just gets more bigger and more powerful. And there's like a guy behind it the whole time. And like his daughter's calling him, and he's like yelling at his daughter to like leave him alone and get in the basement. And like he's watching like all of his neighbors, and it's like a small enough town to like where you know everybody, and he's like, oh, that's the Johnson's place, and oh no, like that's my brother, and and this thing just keeps getting bigger and bigger on his screen because he's got like this really powerful camera like on his dashboard, and that's what he does. He's like a tornado spotter or whatever for the weather people out there. And
Noah or what have you.
yeah, and it's really kind of crazy to watch that thing over the course of an hour just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So if if you have some time to kill, just go and like watch some of that footage. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to. I know. It's so hard because I was young. I was younger when this happened, but I believe I knew somebody that used to live in Joplin. Excuse me, and they were talking about how there was somebody in like a tornado shelter, and they were trying to hold the door shut, and it opened the door and just sucked him out. It's like, yikes.
Yeah, they can do that.
8,000 structures, 75% of Joplin affected. $2.8 billion in damages. The fucked thing about a tornado is there's not that much warning. I think meteorologically they can kind of see it. The pressures start to do their thing. But you think about a hurricane, or well, I guess a hurricane would really be the only one because earthquakes kind of come out of nowhere as well. But shit like that's just so unstoppable, and it's not like you can just move your house,
Right. Yeah. It's kind of crazy, and that's why like that Oklahoma area and Missouri, and it's just like right in the perfect part of you got that Gulf of Mexico. That's what feeds it really, and then you got all that Arctic air that can just flow right on down, and it meets right there.
Well, and then you've got two big ass mountain ranges on either side.
Yeah, and it's in plenty of breathing room. Like that whole area is just flat.
Yeah.
So like if you've got like rain on the ground and it had plenty of time to like evaporate, it's just warm, moist air sitting right there. Just, plus what comes in from the Gulf. So think about that in combination of like mountain air and Arctic air. And then a random jet stream that can just pop up whenever. So yeah, that's why we've had like the groundbreaking tornadoes.
Do they have tornadoes that in other places, or is this like a unique?
No, they don't get that anywhere. Like not to that scale. Like you'll hear about like random stuff popping up in like Spain or something. Not anywhere to that degree. Do they have that? And we're the only place in like the whole world that is capable of even producing something like that.
Oh God.
So
it's almost like the whole place is built on a Native American burial ground or something. There's this picture of the jocking up the entire frame of the camera. I'll put the link in general real quick, but that's what just the width is spooky. And the fact that this guy was so close, I couldn't do that. That same medical facility that I was working in, where I was talking about the generators and stuff, there were a lot of people there that would talk about hearing stuff, and it seems like a lot of some of the articles that I read to talk about ghosts a lot of times they hear children. That's like a common thing, or footsteps, but uniquely children's footsteps. And I know a guy that by all accounts was a completely reasonable dude, but he swears up and down that one night when no one else was there, it's dark and basically empty, he heard that. And then no, this particular guy heard something else. I can't remember specifically, but it was my coworker in my department that heard the children laughing, and I used to tell him he's lying every time, and he never deviated. And I used to go to the place that he heard it, especially, overnight or something, and just chill there and try and feel the energy or what have you, that Donald Trump energy. And I never heard anything, but wouldn't put it past
Yeah,
them.
they move quick. They can just be fed incredibly quick, and they can just burst up. I just posted a video of the kids who went out first. They got like really close to it when it was just kind of dipping down and still kind of going up and down in the sky. And these kids are like probably maybe half mile from the darn thing when it just starts forming, and then it just starts getting bigger. Within seconds, this thing just blows up to like a monster. But
Oh,
yeah,
for sure,
it's really crazy.
Just the beginning of that video with the power lines, like it's whipping the power lines so hard that they arc onto each other and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's another car out on the road. It's so funny. Everyone else is going the opposite direction, and these yahoos are going towards this. Just, oh man, you're right. That comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, and they get big. They can get big so fast, and that's what happened. There was just no warning with this thing. They just thought, okay, a squirrely little tornado is going to pop out of this thing. And there's people like 5-6 miles away watching this thing. So there's footage from 30 different angles, and they're just watching this thing explode like over the trees, as you can see where it's at. And it hits
spooky.
everything all at once. There was like no warning for the schools or anything. There was like kids like buried in bathrooms and stuff, like in the school. They barely had time to get in there. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It doesn't. 161 people killed in the Joplin tornado. Deadliest tornado since 1950.
Everybody was caught off guard. It just slammed and hit the town.
This is something I think about too. Imagine if you're in like a pre-civilization or even early civilization where you're running around building mud huts or whatever, and out of nowhere it just starts to get a little dark and windy, and then something like that drops out of the sky and just starts whipping up everything. Do you feel like, well, yeah, because those places were flat back then as well. Sometimes you think maybe if there's more structures and stuff, there's more things to slow it down, or more civilization. But I don't know, that goes both ways. You cut down a lot of trees, you create these wide open spaces.
It was already like that. The Indians used to talk about it. So like the Indians had these things documented too. And they said that they were massive. In fact, they think that some of them potentially even on record that the Indians saw were larger than anything we've even seen. So who knows what they may have seen. The conditions are right there. But yeah, absolutely, like removing the trees, a lot of that in, just massive open farmland. It just gives them plenty of room. Like it leaves just vast swaths of just hot moisture to just sit there. There's nothing clogging up like, something spiraling out of the cloud or anything like that, like trees can kind of do.
It's the
You
same
know,
with
so-
snowstorms and hurricanes where, you know, you're just doing your thing, gathering berries or whatever, and it just starts to snow or rain like any other day, and you're like, ah, shit, caught in a storm. So you pack it in, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse for 3 days at a time. And then,
Yeah.
and then you're just sitting there like, what in the fuck is going on? Is this the end of the world?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It can shift too real fast. When I was a kid, we had, like I said, we kind of somewhat had it, and you could be outside and like watch the pressure drop like rapidly and like not even really be aware that like something's coming in like that, because there's just, you know, the right conditions and everything like that, like kind of like all through the Midwest. So it's kind of scary. The other video I just posted to you, I mean, obviously you don't have to watch it now or anything, but this is the guy that was like, that videotaped the whole thing of the Moore tornado.
Okay.
And he was just spotting people's homes the whole time he knew. And like, that was the one where his daughter was calling in. And this is what this tornado started off as, a little rinky dink too. And it just grew into like a monster that was just tearing everything apart like a vacuum. So, good stuff. Good watch.
At least we don't really... Man, imagine if we start having some volcano eruptions in the U.S. It's just going to
We
be...
might.
Yeah, I've heard that. You know, there's dormant... I don't know if that's the right terminology, but they haven't exploded. They probably won't explode for a very long time, but they still have the potential to do that. Because, yeah, we have earthquakes, hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, all kinds of
Yellowstone.
exotic weather. Geysers, yeah.
Yeah, we have Yellowstone. We have the big scary one. I don't know how many of them are in the world, but I know like Yellowstone is looked at as like the biggest, one of the biggest ones. I don't know what that would really look like though. I think that they over exaggerate how big it would get. I'm sure it would put up a lot of like ash, but it wouldn't like bury the United States and like, you know, we would all fall.
Nah, it would just be, another
I
incident.
think that area would be screwed. I think that area would definitely be screwed. A large chunk of it around it, but I don't see the whole United States or like a third of it being like buried in ash.
So, let me see. Oh, this
But that's what they
article
claim.
I didn't even realize this article you sent me is from 1988.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. I was just a little kid when all that happened.
I was like, this is pretty well written. Now I know why. It's not just...
There were more of them, but I think that they got scrubbed. And I have a theory about that, but we'd probably have to go into that a little bit later on.
Another thing, I was reading this, and they're like, they bought the house in 1981. I was like, man, 30 years? And now they have to try and just sell the land. At least, you know what's... And then also, my second thought was, they should play this up, like get on Facebook or whatever and market it as haunted land, but they couldn't do that back then. People probably actually thought it might, or there weren't a whole, subgenre of interest around the paranormal back then like there was today.
Yeah, this was a really weird one because everyone like that could have been involved, like anything that was right that you could do to rule out like a ghost is done, and nothing came back of it, so like no one really quite knows what to make of it. So for like anyone that doesn't really know, what happened was they bought that house new, and like all the houses in that area were pretty much new, and they were built around that time that they bought it. And I don't know if they moved in after maybe someone else possibly, and they had just gotten it, because my understanding was they had just gotten it. I don't know if that house was built in like 1981 or whatever, and they had moved in. But my understanding is that they had moved in like around the time we did. So I wasn't sure if there was another family living in it prior to that, but yeah, we knew the Gallows because they had kids, and they moved into this home. And for anybody listening,
Old Bob
this
and
home
Karen.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they were just a regular family, 2 kids, a daughter that I think was around like 10 or 12 or something like that, and then like a younger son. Just normal family.
How old were you in relation to them?
I was like 3.
Okay, so you didn't really.
This was a whole neighborhood, though, a giant neighborhood of like boomers and their kids. Like everybody had kids, all white. It was classic America. It was good stuff. It was like you had your doors unlocked. It was very safe. People always had bonfires at night. It was a good time.
So let's see. In 1981, were they still using that weird? You might know this, Joe. In 1981, were they still using that weird cloth electrical shit that they did? Like they call it knob and cloth or whatever.
No, in '81 they had already had 3, so they already had 3 leg outlets. You still had older houses, which if they bought it in '81, it may have had a 2. Like the outlets didn't have the ground in it, but like they still had normal electricity, dude. They had that since 50s, 60s.
Yeah,
TVs in the 50s had positive and negative. You know what I mean? They still plugged in. They weren't plugged in like washers and dryers nowadays.
Okay, yeah, it says aluminum wire on dedicated circuits of 30 amps or more. For the bigger things for houses built in. This is if it was built in the 80s.
I'm assuming 60s or 50s, right? I suppose.
What, those homes?
Or
yeah, if they bought it in '81, I'm assuming it was built.
No, it was new. They were built in the 80s, I think.
Okay. So the house I grew up in was built mid '80s, and all of our outlets were 3-prong with dedicated washer, dryer, everything. And that was a house that was built 83, 84, I think.
Yeah, that's what we had. And our house was like the same as like most of the others. Like they were built pretty much by like the same like contractors and stuff. Needless to say, that whole area was exploding like in population, which was like the southern suburbs, but no one ever had any problems like this, like ever.
Okay, so here's the one thing I didn't understand. In the article, which maybe you can explain this, it says, once a blue flame an inch in diameter shot out of a wall socket for more than 30 seconds and the outlet still worked. The incident was witnessed by 2 cops. Another time, a similar flame set a mattress afire while investigators were prowling outside. I've read this twice. Are they talking about this house, or are they talking about other things that have been witnessed in the state? Okay,
so let me explain from like how everything kind of started, so you kind of have like an understanding of like what kind of took place. The first incident.
I'm gonna be right back, but I'm gonna listen to the stream. Go ahead, Spez.
All right. So what happened is, for anybody that's like listening out there that doesn't understand this,
there's probably thousands.
What happened was, yeah, thousands of people.
Yeah, we'll have a back catalog, and this will be worth it one day.
Hopefully, that'll be great. But yeah, they. I think the wife was just at home, and possibly like the daughter. I'm not sure on everybody. I know she was at least at home, and the husband wasn't. And she was in the kitchen grabbing something to eat, and she heard like a crackling noise, like you would for like a fire. And she came back into her living room, and her entire chair was engulfed in flames. And we're talking about those like old time like grandpa chairs that didn't move or anything. It was like all like cloth and everything. Yeah, and it was completely engulfed in flames. And she called the fire department, and they were like, well, what were you doing? And they were looking at the socket and everything. Nothing indicated anything. they thought she either did it or she was smoking weed or something like that and dropped an ash and didn't want anybody to know, or they were thinking all sorts of things, but they were like, all right,
But
like,
no investigation, correct?
well, no, they at this point they didn't.
Okay.
But they didn't really believe her, and she didn't see anything. She just came back into the living room and the chair was engulfed in flames. And I don't think any of them smoked or anything like that, but a lot of people did smoke back then. But they had ruled a lot of that out pretty quickly. And then they were both there, the husband and the wife. And then they were standing like right in the living room and watched just like a almost invisible flame just shoot straight out of the light socket. Didn't hit anything, shot out like a couple of feet, and then sucked right back into the wall, like as if you cut off the gas to like a flamethrower. It just went, and stopped like that. They saw that. And then there was a whole bunch of incidences after that point where things were catching on fire. The couch caught on fire in the middle of the night. The police showed up. The fire department showed up. They didn't believe these people. They were telling them like, hey, we're not doing this or anything or blah, blah, blah. They were collecting evidence left and right because the people were totally willing. So they were grabbing samples of everything. They were bringing in chemists looking at stuff at certain points. They didn't believe any of them. So they asked them, can we have a cop sit outside? And they said, yeah. And one day, I guess the cop saw something from his police car, like a giant flame, like that, like brightened up like the kitchen.
Jesus Christ.
And
like so bright for you to notice it outside. You know what I mean?
Well, right. But you're maybe 15 feet away. Well, 15, 20 feet. They were small homes. They weren't huge. Like these were like, starter homes essentially. So you could see, if a flame was going like that, it was like lighting up, certain rooms. And he saw it and went knocking on the door in the middle of the night saying like, oh, I saw it and blah, blah, blah. So they let a firefighter stay overnight there. And a firefighter woke up in the middle of the night and needed to use the bathroom. And he noticed that the whole floor was covered in like a mist. And then he got down on his hands and knees in the middle of the night and started inhaling it. And then went to the phone and called one of his paramedic buddies to have him come down and draw his blood. Because they wanted to see, is there like a gas coming into the home?
Okay, so that's okay. I was totally confused on what they were talking about drawing blood for. Because like, now it makes sense.
Yep.
But the way they wrote the article, I was like, I know I'm missing some shit, but I feel like someone didn't put everything in the article. Like maybe they made too many edits. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so after like that point and they started doing that, they just had like an open presence with the cops. They let like a cop and a firefighter like pretty much be in there at like all times. They eventually ended up seeing like at one point the cops and firefighters saw a flame shoot out of the light socket and like catch something like on a table on fire. There were reported smells of like sulfur, but it was like, from what we were told, it was moving around. So like you would smell it like in the foyer, and then it would move like into the living room, and then you couldn't smell it into the foyer, and then you would smell it in the living room, and then like flames or sparks would start flying from one of the light sockets and just shooting outwards. Where it got really crazy, where the insurance company eventually had to step in, is when a cop walked in the house, I guess to use the washroom, when the daughter came home. And the daughter was all cool, and they went inside, and she started going up the stairs into her room. And before he got into the bathroom, they started hearing a noise, and they looked into her bedroom, and there was just like a giant blue flame shooting out of the light socket, and it lit her bed on fire. So after that, they said, okay, that's it. Now what they ended up doing is they tore that house down like in the most genius way possible, piece by piece. The insurance company came in, moved the people out, paid for everything. It was travelers insurance. They started from the top on down, and they brought in engineers, they brought in electricians, they brought in plumbers, they brought in everybody. They were taking chemical samples. They took samples of everything. By this point was coming back from the lab saying there's no residue of any kind of an accelerant on any of the couches, the chairs, nothing.
That's
and they
weird.
even said if
that's weird.
yeah,
because
they even said you'd be able to find it. You'd be able to tell
all.
what did it. Nothing. Not a damn thing. They never found anything. They couldn't find anything on it. They tore it from top to bottom. What's not in there is there was a German engineer in Germany who they brought in anywhere in the world if they had some kind of structural mystery. This guy was like is known as like
right?
No, this guy heard about this on his own dime and flew in to see if he could like lend a hand, because this guy had figured out, strange phenomenon, like what's causing like a building to tilt, all this. Like he was like the go-to guy in the world for that when you couldn't figure stuff out. He heard about this and flew in on his own dime. He couldn't come up with anything. They took core samples out of the ground. They took multiple ones. And if you know anything about that, that's done incredibly well, and they know what the fuck to look for. They brought in.
I have experience in that, so whenever I saw that they were taking samples, I was like, because the first thing in my head was like, it's not something on the property. It's gonna be a chemical, whether it's natural gas. Pick a argon. You know what I mean? Like you hear about these houses where they have like argon poisoning and they can't figure out why. And it's not, like the closest place that has it underneath the ground is, miles and miles and miles away, but it's traveling underground and wisping into this property under a blue moon. You know what I mean? And that's how they have these weird occurrences that they can never figure out. That was my thing. But whenever I was like, if they pulled core samples and they didn't find anything, there goes my only guess that this was just multiple chemicals mixing that was causing this in the perfect conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But they would have found all of this.
Yeah, and the thing is that there were the amount of force for, I guess, the for the flame to be shooting out would have had to be what you said, some kind of astronomical chemical reaction. Or if it was gas, it would have been coming out in such force, they would have found evidence of something down there. And they were expecting
it's not
that.
Build up. Yeah, I mean, there's large amounts of something that is causing that kind of a reaction that, whether it's, maybe not shoot stuff out of the outlet, you could, in theory, I mean, I've heard of different things that could cause that, but for it to catch the couch on fire, or like catch furniture on fire multiple times, this is a large amount of something in that area.
Yeah, and they found nothing. And I mean literally nothing. They brought in experts, travelers brought in their own experts too. The town was already bringing in people. So they already were having their people in the town go over this, and travelers was stepping in and going, well, we're going to bring in our own people because we have to do our own investigation, because they're the ones that have really played the biggest role in all this and how this has been portrayed too. And I think that they kind of went out of their way to like squash the whole Unsolved Mysteries episode, which there was one, but you cannot find it in their archives now because it's still an open case. They haven't solved it. And I think that this embarrasses travelers in a weird way. And I don't know why they take it that way, but they couldn't figure out like how to solve this case. So it's like an open wound on the company, essentially.
You think that's why they pulled the episode about it?
The thing is, I don't fully remember the episode. I remember when I was younger, and Unsolved Mysteries has gotten in trouble over the years for inaccurately portraying a lot of stories. Hence why, if you remember, when you would watch Unsolved Mysteries, they would always have that, this is not a news broadcast. What it is the people and the places, they come back together to try to recreate the events. So I think that they may have put information out there that wasn't verified. And since it's still an open case, it's kind of like, okay, well, we can't have people meddling with it. There was a Chicago Herald story that they had that I couldn't find either. This is the only one, the Chicago Tribune one, that said like spooky stuff is going on in southern suburbs. And, so I think that travelers can't put on the paper like, hey, this is a ghost thing.
Yeah.
And if you read
Yeah,
the
because
article,
oh god, if any insurance company ever admitted anything that is halfway whispering about legally we're admitting to paranormal, holy fuck at the amount of Sylvia Brown fans
right,
that will come out and be like, well, my house burned on fire because ghouls did it. And you're like,
right.
bro, just, oh, fuck me.
So I think there's bigger, politics going on with why it was kind of squashed over the years, because it's still an open case. Now, I tried in college to do a film on this. I was going to do a film. I had all the people. The only people I was missing was the Gallo family. And I found the daughter on Facebook and sent her a message, and she blocked me. So she wants nothing to do with it.
Before, I'm assuming.
It's
right?
possible. She could have been contacted by Hollywood, but something tells me like travelers might have paid them off to just stay quiet because of exactly what you said. They don't know how to solve this thing, and it's like this could hurt the company in the long run. So who knows? I do think, from what my mom told me, the parents split up. So this whole thing fucked with them. I don't, really know what kind of impact it had on them. So,
I mean, at some point, wouldn't you start asking your spouse, like, "Hey, are you trying to collect insurance on this?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no." And you're like, "Well, look, the entire town is saying that they can't figure it out, and you're really the only one that's home every time this happens. You and your fucking daughter. You know what I mean? Like, I get that it might be an issue in the marriage."
Well, they suspected the daughter
fucking doing some weird shit. I mean, I was gonna kind of start poking into that one, but if she's not a fucking college graduate chemist, how is a kid outsmarting people who do this for a living, right?
Well, that was the cops' first theory, is it was the daughter, because it tended to happen when most of the time the daughter was home. And that's part of the reason why the cop kind of stopped and watched the kid go up the stairs before he went in. And then that's when they saw this, and they were like, she didn't do that. I just watched her get off the bus, walk up to the home, and went in right behind her. And then I saw this. So, I mean, it's no one knew what to make of it. But they literally, from what they did is, if you can think about it, they started in the attic and just tore apart the roof and worked their way down, like just like ants deassembling a cookie. Just the whole thing.
That's the coolest part to me right there, is that they actually took the time to do it the way that most people would want it done. I mean, you're talking a huge company that is going to say, look, just fucking demolish it and pay it out and fuck it. Like, I'm totally surprised they didn't do this and say, I don't know, pay them off. Do an NDA and make it go away. We pay them off, NDA, we say foul play, we get some, local cop they'll say, well, there's an arsonist that got, out of prison, he's in the area, we suspect him, we can't prove it, end of the day, case closed, right?
So there's this weird ass blog about this, and he brings up some good points. Hold on, what was the first one I saw here? Okay, so and then this was also mentioned in the Chicago Tribune article, but the fact that the electrical sockets were undamaged.
Yeah, that was the big thing.
That was the weirdest thing for me. And then
that's why the firefighters didn't believe them at first, because they knew what to look for. They know, like, when they go into a situation like that, their mind is starting to dissect, where did this start? You know, because they know how to follow. Like when you're an experienced firefighter, which they had veterans, like Chicago veterans that were on this force, like guys 30, 40 years in. They immediately walked into the home and would look for stuff like that. And they didn't see anything. They didn't find any residue. They did the whole cotton swab, send it for chemical analysis, everything, you know, and they didn't find anything, you know, but they saw it. They saw sparks. And that was the other thing, too, is, you know, they saw sparks and other things that should have left residue. Nothing. And you can
post that
tell.
link that you're looking at, Flo? Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, well, you were talking about, you know, them not wanting to have much to do with it. So this was the 80s, and these people couldn't just read about this shit on Facebook. So people would drive to their house and sit outside waiting for something to happen. So
yeah, it was a big
imagine.
gathering. Like it became a circus, and there was cops there all the time towards the end, and it was really spooky because, like, imagine like having something like that wasn't tossing, you know, garbage cans around or anything like that. Just imagine something like setting stuff on fire in your home. Like that's it. Like,
That's
and there's no
horrifying.
clue. Yeah, and that terrified them, and they weren't doing it. You know, like I said, these firefighters. There's like 24 between on record, according to my dad, firefighters, paramedics, and police officers in combination that saw this. They even had a priest come in and bless the place and everything like that. You know, so they it wasn't like an exorcism. He just did the blessing and it was like, all right, I'm gonna go drink, or whatever priests did back then. Yeah, it was very surreal because there was no like, I heard a voice in my sleep and then I woke up and then the couch was on fire. It was like, no, like we heard what sounded like a fire. We ran to the stairs and the whole couch was on fire, like at 3 a.m, just engulfed, the whole thing engulfed.
And another thing that this blog brings up, apparently the house itself remained undamaged. Like the furniture, mattresses, couches, various things would burst into flames, and then but like the whole entire house wouldn't catch on fire.
Yeah, it was just individual items. There was no residue or black residue from anything, like on the ceiling. Nothing was like leaving like marks. It like dissipated, and there was like no evidence of it, which was
So
very
hang on,
strange.
would it burn if the couch caught on fire? Would the couch put itself out, like burn out?
She had to put the first one out. She like literally went into the kitchen, was grabbing like cups of water and like throwing it on the chair at first. I don't know what happened with the couch or anything like that, but she was pretty shocked and horrified. Her whole family was like, no one knew what the hell was going on, and it was various objects that would start on fire too, or flames would just shoot out of the light sockets. There was one time when uh, sparks started shooting out of all the appliances sockets in the kitchen while they were standing in it. Um, that was witnessed by like a whole bunch of people apparently. Um, yeah, I mean, pretty much, I think after that cop saw the flames, like just sitting in a squad car 15 feet away from like the kitchen windows, like in the kitchen, and you know, you can see that glow of the light. Um, that kind of attracted people. It was a big deal, but I think what Travelers did is Travelers doesn't know what to do with this, and like you said, for like, you know, bigger purposes, they had to. This is one of those sensitive cases they have to kind of keep open and keep monitored, because if they ever try to close it, they need a valid reason, you know, and they don't have it.
Two quick questions. When they took the house apart, did they? Oh Jesus, I broke that. When they took the house apart, did they put something back on the property? And second question is, did they conclusively rule out ball lightning?
um
Because that was the whole
Rule out what?
something ranch. What was that? That alien ranch in New Mexico where it was ball
Skinwalker?
lightning. Yeah, I mean, skinwalkers, depending on how paranormal you go, most of the things I've read about skinwalker is that a lot of it goes back to ball lightning. There has been some ball lightning caught on camera. They've proven how it can exist. They can prove what causes it. And then there was that one ball lightning inside an airplane that was documented too. So, like, is this possibly ball lightning?
No one described anything like that. And I knew these people too. Like, I've sat around as a kid at, like, reunions and like get-togethers with all these different people and stuff like that, and they all talked about this. So, like, my a lot of people were involved in like the town's politics and stuff, so like there was a lot of shared information on it, and everybody was on the same page. It was sparks were flying out of the light sockets in a lot of cases right before flames would shoot out. The sparks weren't leaving any kind of residue or anything, and they watched it start objects on fire occasionally. They don't know if all the fires are necessarily coming from the light sockets, but they witnessed this. Like, at least a dozen of them witnessed just that alone.
That's
then
gonna
you got
be scary as fuck, right? Because that's every part of you genetically is scared of the one thing we can't control, which is predators and fire.
Well,
Thousands of years we've been afraid of fire, and you have your house just fucking catching on fire randomly in the middle of the fucking day and night. Because every night they went to sleep, they were like, is tonight the night that we burn down in our sleep?
Yeah,
Like,
they had fire
they didn't sleep for 2
extinguishers.
years, or like 20 years.
Maybe. Think about the nightmares you might have from that. But you know what's really scary about it? And I want you guys to, and this took me many years to figure out. And I was like, what is really like drawing me to this? Like, why is this so intriguing? Is how quiet the sinisterness of it was. There was, like I said, there was no cans flying around. There wasn't doors opening up. Nothing like that. It was literally just fire. That's it. And it was just the crackle of the fire. That's the only noise that was ever made, like, from any of this terror. And I think that silence, like, it's like more powerful than like other ghost stories or like weird phenomenon that have ever happened. And on top of that, everybody else saw this.
Yeah, you're not going crazy. Like, when everyone's like, hey, by the way, I saw the couch catch fire today. Like, how was your day at work?
And everybody thought everybody was crazy that was saying that they saw this. It was the funniest thing because everybody thought the gallows were crazy. Every firefighter and cop, and they were drawing up papers. They were pissed. They thought these people were like, serial arsonists and doing crazy shit inside their home at first. And then they started seeing it, and then they kind of got on board. And then the big fish came in, from like the counties and like, people in like the
real arsonists, or like the real arson investigators, not the city boy, but like the state guy. You're like, holy fuck, dude, they brought in a state.
You remember?
I've been part of a state arson investigation for work, and it gets real fucking serious when you start getting out of towners come in for investigating what happened to a building.
Yeah.
It totally changes the fucking vibe when you're like, oh, where are they from? And you're like, they're from another state. And you're like, oh, fuck.
They brought in guys like De Niro. Remember De Niro's character in Backdraft? He was like the arson investigator. Like, there's tough dudes. There's tough dudes that, like, there was one dude that my dad was like scared of. And that came in from Chicago, and he thought he was going to come in and solve this thing and figure it all out. And he was just like, he's like, wait a minute, so you guys are telling me no one's been touching this or anything or da. And like, he was freaked out. He was like, I don't know what's going on here. What did I just walk into? So, but yeah,
I'll read a small portion from this blog. It just says, One officer spoke up defending the young, frightened girl. How could she, he demanded. She never went upstairs and she was in our sight the whole time before the fire, and he demanded an answer as to how she could have made the strange flames that shot from the wall like a blowtorch. The fire marshal once again examined the house, determining the cause had been electrical in origin. This astounded the officer, who quite heatedly pointed out that ComEd had pulled the plug quite literally on the whole house. The main power cable stood coiled in the yard near the street. So, like, even
Isn't
when
that
they
crazy?
disconnected the electrical, according to the blog, this could be, pros.
You got to
but-
remember, no, that's actually probably true, because like I said, I don't have all the 100% details. I should ask my mom. She'll probably know a lot more details of this, but while all this was going on, they were testing everything. So yeah, it's very possible that ComEd was probably turning off the power, and they were bringing in equipment maybe to look at things. And I'm sure cops that were outside the home, we're watching all this and we're kind of aware. But yeah, I mean, we're talking like 24 people who realistically had no connection other than kind of like working together. But there was a lot of people that thought like these were just some small town yahoos having some fun playing a prank, and the cops were in on it, and the firefighters were in on it. No, these were like square guys. These were guys who were like, no, we thought they were doing that.
No, I'm saying like someone who would do crop circles in a small town just to fuck with people.
Yeah.
And then periodically like the FBI comes in, they're like, hey, so by the way, it's not the Johnsons. We know for a fact they didn't do the crop circles, and then everyone's like, oh fuck. I have no idea what this is, and you're like, well, things got weird. So what's on that property now? You said they took it apart.
So they didn't I think they didn't establish a residence there. There's people including ourselves that went to go try to find it. It's gone. I think they just put like a sign there and like welcome to and like trees, because there used to be a residence there. I'm 99% sure we tried to go find it one year when we went back there, and it wasn't there. So
hey, what are some of the other theories online regarding, because I'm assuming, like, if we're finding articles about this, I'm assuming there are some people who have looked into this about theories.
They couldn't find anything, and they didn't find a blip in any of the samples. They said they found nothing but solid clay, dude. Solid fucking clay. Like, and that's a huge telltale sign. Like, when you look at a core sample and you can honestly look at it and say nothing's been disturbed, like nothing's coming up. Now, I don't know how many they took. They probably should have taken like 50, in my opinion, in every direction down there possible. But they took 2 or 3, I think. And that's while the house was still intact. So I don't know if they did more possibly and went deeper afterwards, maybe. I don't know how all that works, but they bulldozed that fucking home.
Was it on thing. Do you know if it was on 169th Street? Does that sound right?
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about, because I think we were right off of 169th.
So a lot of people are saying it's 8800 169th, but that house, it could work because the house that's there now was built in 83, and the family only lived in the house for 7 months in 1981. So if they let it sit for a year after they bulldozed it and then built this house, it could be 8800.
It might have. I don't know what they did with it, but I don't.
Was it on a corner?
I don't think it's there.
No, it wasn't on a corner, right?
It might have been.
Because 8801 looks like the corner lot.
It might be. I should pull up like Google Maps and take a look.
Yeah, I'll send you
What's interesting is, if nothing has been going on in the house that's there now, doesn't that make it fucking weirder?
Honestly,
nobody knows.
So I've got 2 theories that are like oddball things. I wonder if radiation was understood back then like it was now. I imagine all those people would have, started to get cancer. Which is hard to, to go back and look for. But I don't even know, like, radiation is radiation. It doesn't cause flames to appear. Like, fire in general is matter changing from one state to another chemically.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think even if you shot like a beam of concentrated radiation, it would be imperceptible until, unless you're looking at your DNA. So I don't know if there's some other kind of, thing that they didn't necessarily have the ability to test for in the 80s that they do now, but maybe this was, an experiment of some sort.
Maybe it might have been one of some billionaire was just having fun and fucking with some like family, like with, I don't know. I mean, it was a very weird event. There was lots of people watching it. People saw different things. Is any of it a tall tale? I don't know.
There's a particular agency that I have in mind. So I feel like I'm trying to think how I would do this. Like, if this house had like hard conduit for the electrical cable to run through, you could put a little gas line in it and then maybe have an ignition source somewhere and do this like special effects style. But there's still too many weird things. There was, and this could be bullshit because this was on the blog, I think, but apparently the girl's bed caught on fire and the smoke didn't go out of her room. Like, they opened the door and it was just a sheet like hanging in the air, and when you open a door when it's smoky, it does it like whoosh, like comes out a little bit. If that's the case, that defies physics. Like, there's nothing.
It was creepy, man. It was really creepy because everybody had a very consistent story of just like, what in the fuck am I witnessing here? And it's like I said, this thing was silent, and that's to me, that's what just, it strikes me the most. That's what gives me the most goosebumps, is that because it's not, there's clearly something there. Either all these people are in on it realistically, and my dad and all these other people, in the town that, had to hear about all that, either they're all in on this lie, or, they probably have the most credible, real ghost story in America. And I kind of think that because I've talked with a lot of these people, and like they couldn't believe like what happened with all that, and that science, like literally science, like couldn't even tell them what the hell was going on. There was like thermal cameras too. They were shutting down power and doing this experiment with the house and that experiment. They were throwing every Ghostbusters trick you could possibly come up with.
Yeah,
and they couldn't figure this damn thing out.
Like that's really weird to have fire with no heat. I wonder if they saw the house on that, through the infrared while one of these instances was taking place. That would be the interesting thing to see.
Yeah, it's really scary, man. It's something I heard about when I was a kid, and like you see like the style of those homes, like I'm just looking at them, those homes like give me goosebumps when I see them today. So like that's like a style kind of in that area, of like, and when I see those and I go back to that neighborhood, man, like I get goosebumps. I was like, that was a really weird thing that went on. So who knows, maybe the whole town and like the adults were in on like a big joke. And
so this is Trib Local, or something, but it's talking about various things in Indiana and Illinois, And under Orland Hills, it says, during the spring of 1988, at least 26 separate occurrences of unexplained fires took place in a private residence on 169th Street. So I guess this is what they're talking about. But they're saying
Post that in general, would you?
1988. Yeah. So they have
Yeah,
the
it's well
dates fucked
documented,
up.
man. What I
So
should
how-
do is go to
88.
Travelers and get an official report.
Oh, no, yeah, they have the dates wrong because, or this guy is just fucking LARPing. It was then determined that the activity was poltergeist in nature. That sentence
No.
isn't even
Yeah, no.
formatted right, buddy. But
No, that was just the opposite.
yeah.
They were like, no ghosts,
It's-
no ghosts, please.
When the foundation of the home was dug, 3 graves and a single headstone that dated back to the 1800s were unearthed. This guy's full of shit.
Yeah, make sure you mention that it was an Indian graveyard, right? Isn't that normally
That's
how
what
it
I
goes?
said earlier. I was like, it's almost
well,
like
that
our
part of
whole
it is
country.
true. That part of it is true. So they do actually think that that was like an area suspected of that, and that was thrown out there. So that was real.
Oh yeah, so Indy.
Not that would mean anything. I'm just saying that like that they did say that. So I don't know.
What
No,
what would
I'll
be
say
the
this,
tribe of note in that area?
There is another article out there by the Chicago Herald. It's out there. I can't find it, and I even tried going on their
I
website.
passed it.
But there's more out there, and like I said, there is a Unsolved Mysteries episode, and they scrubbed it. And I'm going through the videos now, actually, of Unsolved Mysteries, hoping that maybe like another site has it or something. But it's there. I think it's just what you said. Travelers floated like, who knows, maybe like half a million to maybe do all that at that time, which was a lot of money. So, you know, saying that it was a paranormal activity like that won't end well. There might be a clock or like a time limit, like a lifetime time limit or something. So like 75 years where they get to keep it open and then they can actually close it or something without it damaging them or something.
Yeah, there's gotta be limits.
But yeah, I thought it was so weird because I was like, wait, who's trying to erase this? You know, so I this is like the only article I could really find.
By the way, I came across something, but it's similar words, keywords, but it's Chicago Tribune, but it's tied to something else. It wasn't the what you're talking about. I'm sorry, I got excited.
Yeah, there was a Herald article that it was it literally like the title was like spooky happenings in South suburban Chicago. And they were talking about that people were parking outside and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So maybe the town just doesn't want like, you know, ghost people coming to it or something, you know. And
No town does. Look
yeah,
at
so
every
maybe
fucking
that's
house
part of
that
the
you can think
politics.
of.
So who the fuck knows, to be completely honest. But you know, the fact that the girl blocked me on Facebook, I think that says a lot. But that doesn't.
I'm sure.
Well, because no, her specifically, because everybody thought it was her. So, you know,
I was gonna make a film that was gonna be like in the same style as those like Unsolved Mysteries types of shows, but just filmed like that in that old 80s grainy, and just make it really creepy where you don't really know, like, is the girl setting the fires, are they just happening, and you know, like, you kind of like make your own determination. And I was gonna write all that, and I wanted to talk with her so like I could better like craft all this, and she was just like, fuck you. So I think that would make a really great horror movie, to be honest. It just kind of leaves you guessing, like at the end,
But you
like
can't
what
be
really
the only
happened.
person. Yeah, you can't be the only person who wanted to do this, right?
No,
Like,
no
I'm sure
one's.
other
I
people-
swear to God, dude, no one has touched this damn thing. I searched.
Oh no,
around,
we're about to get shut the fuck down.
For
Get a dog.
watch, you guys watch, because of this now. Like, it's gonna pop up as a movie in like 2 years. But yeah, I was in the process
we
of
are
writing
the butterfly effect. We definitely are.
I thought like a short like half-hour movie, low budget, you could easily make something really creepy like that. Just think about them, because no one's had a movie like that. Like you just have a scene
heard
that's.
of the Senator John Humphrey house?
I don't know what that is.
So 9830 West 144th. It's also in Orland Park. But it's a house that I'm trying to
Was
find.
it haunted?
Well, I'm trying to find when it was built.
There was one that was haunted,
But
and it chased a priest out, apparently.
Essentially, John Humphrey was a senator, and his family was the only family that lived in the house, period. And then in 87, after the death of the youngest Humphrey family member, John, they turned it over to the Orland Historical Society. But yeah, they're like spiritual mediums and people of that nature like to go to this place. But it is interesting, a house that old where only one family lived in it.
Yeah, there's one that we heard about, that one of the priests, our priest at our church, was chased out of. And he apparently tried to go back to the Vatican to do like an exorcism, and there was like, no, we're not doing that. And I don't know. But that happened at like locally. So that's why I wonder, were these a bunch of bored people faking this? Was Hollywood or the CIA or Mossad just fucking with us in some weird,
maybe this is
bigger
just a gaslighting
idea
experience.
plan?
Literal
Exactly.
and ironic gaslighting.
Well, think about how easy that would be.
That's
like
what I was saying,
took,
pipe gas through
you
the
could take a
conduit or
house and do
something.
that. Exactly. So, and then you could have a little fog machine that that turns on, that no one would know, and it's like, oh my god, there's mist all over the ground.
Now I'll say this, like, okay, so looking up the history of a house is hard, because my ex, they knew the history of the house because it came from her grandfather, bought it from the original owners, and they built it, or they knew the people that built it, and then it was like it went to the son grew up, and then the son sold it. So I mean, the house was built in 1880, 1890, somewhere around there. And then fast forward to 2002, I think they moved out of that house. And the only reason that we knew the history of the house was there was paperwork of like newspaper clippings and like stories that had been documented, where it used to be a doctor's house. 2 patients died in that doctor's office. Okay, it was a big house. And later on, another owner hung himself in the basement. Now, we know this is true. Like, we have the clippings, but like, this is something that like you can't find. You would have to go to the local paper and look up documentation on maybe not even the house address, but just like what families lived in that area, then what year did they die, try to figure it out that way. But like, it's always so hard to find the history of these houses, of like what happened here, what happened over the last 50, 100 years of a house. There could, in theory, be other things that happened in that city that like some people just didn't talk about, right? Like if someone had a outlet that shot fire one time, if you don't tell anyone, no one's gonna know about it, right?
Well, what
Yeah.
would be interesting is to go to the building department and see about permits pulled or something like that. If somebody keeps redoing the electrical in their house over and over and over again. They're paying their taxes like a good little citizen and pulling permits each time.
Yeah, but I mean, God, I've never pulled permits for interior work, and
Well, but I imagine you
know.
would just pull the permit once, and if the work has to be redone, you wouldn't have to redo it. But unless the ghosts.
No,
are
I'm saying
really
I've never done
dastardly.
permits. No, you just a fucking in-law, and you have him come over and redo your fucking house.
Well, see,
Like-
that's good in the short term, but if you ever have to do if you ever have to do insurance, or like,
yeah, I know, but I'm saying like
they come
small town.
Yeah, dude, I've done
be
insane shit with no permits where we had like
Oh.
just piles of debris, and the homeowners like, you guys are gonna haul that away, right? And we're like, no. And he's like, I can't have my neighbors seeing all this debris, and he had to hire, you know, someone with a loader to come get it all. But yeah, no, definitely done some unsanctioned jobs. But I mean, I think it's stupid. It's your house.
Now, the one thing I'll say about the power is, I'm sure when they unplugged the power that they were monitoring the outlets. They were monitoring the breaker. That would have been the first thing the power company would have done, is check, you know, pull it from the main and then see, is this house getting power somewhere else?
Yeah, I think they were doing all of that. Like I remember them, like when you brought up like the power company, that triggered a memory of like someone saying that they were shutting things off, and they were doing experiments and looking for everything. Like they had like the gas company's people in there, like the gas company, like all their people who were supplying it to the house were going in there. So they had like those guys, private contractors, and then on top of that, like the insurances people, and then whoever in the hell else wanted to be brought in the state.
All right. So here we go. According to
I have to pee. I'll be right back.
The Desiree News. Oh, okay, well, we're just gonna have to wait till he gets back. But one thing I'll say real quick. They said there was almost everybody said there was a smell of sulfur as well. I know, Alex Jones style. But
whatever you're reading, post it, because everything that is.
This is another article I want to discuss with him that was written in the 80s, and
yeah, I was like, just send it, because everything I'm sending to my chemist, I want to know his take on it, because he's been a chemist from 70s to 2009. So, you know, he was a chemist during the 70s, 80s, 90s, and most, you know, all of 2000s. I want to know his take. I want to know, like, what he thinks it is. Which, I mean, we're not going to come up with anything that someone has not questioned officially. But it's, I don't know, this is the fun of it, right? But like locally, like I live in Georgia, but like if it happened in Georgia, I'm sure Atlanta Gas Light, Southern Power Company, you know, the water department would have been there. Water department would have said, you know, what kind of gases are in the water that could have crept up through the water supply. I'm sure they would have checked to the water source from 2 counties over to say, is there a gas that has made it into the water supply and is affecting the town, and this house is the first clue before we start having other houses catching on fire because of a gas in the water supply, you know?
yeah, Spez, you
I mean, any small town would have been like, God, like this could, if this is a ongoing issue for the city, we could have this happen across the entire town.
Yeah.
Like, how scary is that, right?
So
you know,
I think I
might
might
like,
have...
fuck, is there gas in the water?
Well, that's another thing with fracking, you know. That's something that they were saying, was that their water was flammable or some shit.
Well, I mean, that does
would be
happen.
More recent.
That was what was that Tommy Lee Jones movie about the volcano where the water was acidic after it was flammable because of the volcano?
Volcano. That's what it was called.
Fuck you too.
Oh,
I know. I was like, I think it's called Volcano.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
I haven't seen it.
Because there was that movie, and then there was a Pierce Brosnan movie that came out around the same time, but like one was Volcano
Dante's
and the
Peak.
other one. Yeah, there you go. Fucking Dante's Peak was the fucking second best, but yeah.
They were great. They were both good.
So I found another article that says, "Bull or not, spooky house is bulldozed." Which I fucking love that title, I gotta say. But this was also written in 1988. Because we're plebeians, we didn't think about this. It says, the fire was under pressure, and that kind of pressure can't build up in electrical conduit because it's open throughout the entire house. So you would have to, you couldn't do it through the conduit. And if you think about it, the junction box has space behind it, so you could just route something else under pressure. But if you did that, the outlet would arc to it more than likely at some point when somebody's plugging something in.
won't the outlet burn?
Yeah. And then also,
but this all goes back to the outlet. That's correct, right?
There would have
the
to be,
outlet itself
there would have to be
burn.
some kind of obstruction to the outlet to make it burn outside of the outlet, so that. But yeah, it's still, even that nozzle,
right?
that nozzle would heat up crazy.
Yeah, there was no evidence of that, and they looked for every piece of that.
Yeah,
like they knew to look for melted light sockets and then alterations in color, and they know that like when you burn certain materials, they leave certain types of residues, and everything was tested. Just nothing. And
okay, so let's go full Alex Jones.
Okay.
Follow me on this, okay? You had the electric Kool-Aid experiments in 70s, okay? If you wanted to reproduce, the kids who came up after MK Ultra and wanted to do something similar to, if you believe that there's a connection with Charles Manson and LSD, that it's possible that they could say, okay, fuck it, let's pick a random house at random in a small town, and let's fuck with them, and then whenever we start having people look into it, we'll just yank the evidence, right? Whatever it is you install in the house, you make sure you can take it out without a county investigator or without a state investigator finding it. So standalone systems, you have a standalone pressurized gas in the ductwork, and then separately you have something to ignite it. Electronic. I mean, we're talking post-Cold War CIA tech. It wouldn't be hard, in theory.
Well, here's the thing. Again, like the building. So it's hard to figure out. So apparently, that particular family lived in the house for 7.5 months. But it was a 9-year-old home. So I wonder what happened in the 9 years previous. It was 9 years old before it was bulldozed. So it was like 8 years old when they moved in.
So what is that, 72? 73?
How would you remove a contraption like in the wall?
It's impossible, I mean...
Yeah.
Unless
you couldn't even do that. You would need, like, if they said, okay, we went in there and we found little weird doors everywhere, like, okay, there, jigs up, you know what I mean? Like, but they didn't. They brought in everybody.
Or even, and that explanation is even more insane.
Because they wanted to find that, and they couldn't find that as an answer. They couldn't find anything. And they brought in, the Midwest's best, and in some cases the world's best. Like I said, that German guy heard about this and flew in on his own dime. He just showed up like,
Hello.
Yeah, I don't want to go so Alex Jones that we start saying the state investigators and the German guy were also in on it.
Well, here's the thing.
Whole thing was a massive Truman Show gig.
Well, here's
we're gonna make
something
this one person lose their goddamn life.
We haven't discussed yet, but this could be the phenomena where people all share a hallucination at the same time. And
that's the other thing. What if they were all drugged? What if they were like all drugged or something with some like weird radical like experimental drug? Yeah. And like they were all just having random flashes. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you put that chemical in the house, right?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't explain how stuff started on fire, though. That's the only problem, because like the stuff was.
Oh, yeah,
it was all damaged.
And it wouldn't be burned. Yeah.
It was all burned and damaged, but they couldn't find accelerants on any of the items. So like butane from like a butane lighter, or like a starting point. It was just nope. It was like it all burst into flames at once.
Um, Packer Engineering was hired by travelers, and I bet they have photographs. I wonder, like, so
How
it's
would we get a
Packer
hold of this?
Engineering. Well,
I would say go to Travelers and
that
see if they
company-
would be willing.
Yeah, that company might not even exist anymore.
Who, Travelers?
Packer
Or Packard?
Yeah,
but-
Packer.
Well, it doesn't matter. But the information went to Travelers. If Travelers closed the case, yeah, I don't know, but I don't think they're gonna hand it over to me. Like, I'm not in insurance. You know what I mean? The only thing
I'm
I
not
can
in
possibly do is
insurance.
sue them.
Yeah, I love the way you.
Yeah, because think about it. If they give me the information, the only thing they have nothing to gain and a lawsuit to lose. What if? You know what I mean?
We're gonna have to
Like,
do
when I used to
some.
work at a vet.
We're gonna have to do some corporate espionage, allegedly.
Jesus. Like, when I used to work at a veterinarian, right? If I wanted to get the medical file on an animal that already died, it was pulling teeth because they had nothing to gain. But they knew if they turned over that medical file and anything was not perfect, you know, it could be the equivalent of a wrongful death suit.
Okay.
Right.
Whether
yeah.
it be civil court or whatever. So, I mean, they like, the only time I ever got medical files for a dead animal was we were friendly with the other office, we were actually friends with them, or if it was my animal or someone's animal that I knew, and it was simply, hey, I'm in a position I can get the documents. I just want to give this to someone that's a family member for them to actually know, 20 years later, what happened to their favorite dog. That's all it is. But, like, I don't think the insurance company would give this.
No.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that this is like a high sensitive case too. And like you said earlier, like this could affect businesses, their reputations, all those sorts of things. So by leaving it open, they might be just like running the clock on like some kind of a time window that allows them to like close it without having.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly possible. I mean NDAs are, I think they're like infinite. They can be. So I mean,
Whatever you
honestly,
want it
what
to be.
sounds more likely, if they're that tight-lipped about it, it probably like something from the government, saying not to like a gag order or something like that.
They
Yeah,
were
but
put
the
under a
opposite-
gag.
Good.
I was gonna say they were eventually actually put under a gag order from Washington D.C. I was gonna tell you guys like there was weird fear of like satanic cult shit in that area too. That
Okay.
that
This
is
the 80s.
yeah, and
This is Finder's Cult timeline. Think of that. Holy fuck! I just thought about this. This is the same time frame as Finder's Cult.
yeah, and there's a story with that too. If you guys want to hear that,
Of course.
there was
We should've started
children.
with that.
Oh well, I didn't really think about it, but I didn't really connect it until like right now.
Oh, no worries.
Thinking about
81.
it actually.
What year is Finder's Cult? 86?
88.
Okay,
Yeah, it was like
88.
later. No, it was around the late 80s or something like that.
So they bulldozed the house 7 years later, right?
Yeah, they did that. But remember, there was the
So
schools.
that's 88.
Yeah, there was the schools that got caught with the cult. Remember, there was the underground in California.
Yeah, there was a thing with the tree schools too, right?
Yeah, and they said it was like satanic panic and that the news tried to squash it. Our town and like these same people, by the way, same people that were like involved in like the politics and all the stuff in the town, they said they were told to drop it. Like, do not have any more meetings about satanic panic. This came from Washington, from the Department of Justice. So that happened. My mom was telling me about that when the Finders documents dropped from the FBI, and she was telling me about that. And inside there, well, she was there for all of that, everybody was involved in like town politics. Like my mom did paperwork and stuff, and it was a small town, and like everybody kind of like put in a hand. It was ran by like the young boomers, in their 20s and stuff. Yeah, there was, they were told by the Department of Justice from Washington to drop it. Do not have more meetings about satanic panic. it's not real. And then in that finder's cult, those documents, there was the preschools, and I can't remember what the preschool was called. It's on the tip of my tongue.
I would have to watch
It was like
the
MacArthur
stream on it. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. He summed it up really well. And I remember telling people I worked with, like, hey, you should watch this stream. I don't know if that was a good idea, but
no, because he did the interview. He did the part 2 was the interview, and that was no internet lol shit. That was strictly educational.
Yeah, it was really good, and he did a really good job of summing everything up. But it was like the McMartin preschool. So that's what it was, and that came out real. They put the documents inside of there stating that no, there was tunnels. They did find them. So it was just that like they stepped in.
Very disconcerting, and I don't know if this is political or not, but it's very disconcerting that the government would say, you know, X definitively is not real. Anytime you hear X doesn't exist with finality, it's just very odd. And then for the government to do something like just, you know, derive of that with, you know, what you can. But
yeah, we had multiple kids in the surrounding counties that went missing. There were bones found for various people at certain points. There was a lot of fear of like something weird going on, and then the McMartin preschool thing kind of happened, and there was like whispers of people talking about satanic cults, not just like making it up, like, hey, like some of this shit is actually going on and there's weirdos off in the woods. Because if you pulled up a map and kind of like looked at that town and like looked at where it's located, it's off in the boonies. It used to be like that whole area was never developed, you know. Now it is. But you have to understand, like going way back, like where that town was located, that's like the that was considered like far suburbs, you know, and now it's pretty much engulfed in the Chicagoland area. So there was weird stuff that went on, and they were told from Washington to drop all that. You know, they got a call saying like, don't do that. And that's where stranger danger kind of came from. And here's the weird thing. They hid this from me when I was a kid. Like, they didn't really tell us about it, but like they kind of brought us to these like meetings and stuff to like, you know, teach us about like, hey, if you see anybody that's like offering you a ride or anything like that, you don't go with them. Ralph talked about the one that happened near him. But yeah, absolutely. But you know, they were really freaked out because like they were freaked out by me because like I was so like easily suggestible. You know, because I was just a goofy kid and, you know, off in La La Land. I was a kid of the 80s. It was magical. There was candy everywhere, and it was a good time in video games. All right. But
what was that city again?
That this happened in?
Yeah.
It was Orland Hills, Illinois.
What happened with Ralph? Oh no, never mind. No, I don't want to go into it. I remembered it. God damn it. Never mind.
Yeah, it was like the three kids.
The West Memphis or whatever it was. Yeah.
They made a bunch of movies about it.
Yeah. So but yeah, there was weird stuff, but I mean, I don't know if they were connected, but maybe they were, you know. We don't know. Maybe these people were just fucking with us, you know.
I mean, it's a fuck of a distraction, right? I mean, but all of it goes into the satanic panic. Because, I mean, what I was going to bring up was, let's say this had nothing to do with it, right? Let's say that it was, you know, there's statistically a serial killer every, you know, so many million people, right? So they're bound to show up in small towns. Small towns, you can get away with a little bit more sometimes, or you made the argument you get away with more in New York because it's unconnected. Regardless, let's say that these are two isolated events, okay, about the missing people and this house with the outlets, okay? If you were in charge of the government, wouldn't you also say, look, I you know, I've looked, you know, if you were in charge, you could say, look, I looked over the paperwork, there's nothing here, but you got to drop this, because you're going to have people drawing red strings together that they're not connected, and we know they're not connected, but holy fuck, you're going to cause a panic. and you're
Well-
going to cause a very scary reality for those people in this area, and it's going to be like and because it's not real in their eyes, you can make the argument, if you know for a fact it's not real, you can't disprove that. So you're always going to be wondering, oh my god,
okay.
they're
So imagine
right?
you're like normies in the 80s. What is the benefit to them to tell you that satanic, cults don't exist, or that there's nothing to worry about? What is who benefits the most from them doing that, the government doing that, and why? I guess those are the questions to ask yourself. It's hard to account for what normies will do today, much less 30 years ago, but
not the same thing, right? NPC is always going to be an NPC, so I mean, there's nothing to gain, right?
And then so there's this guy on YouTube called Dave Politis, I think, but he talks about missing people a lot. Oh, excuse me. And actually, I don't think it was him, it was Bibble. Bibble mentioned this guy who was he was a police officer in New York, and he found, essentially he was investigating this pimp, and the pimp ended up shooting a cop. So the police department was like, okay, catch this guy no matter what and find out as much as you can about him. And through finding out so much about this pimp, he started to investigate some high-level people in government about, human trafficking. And before he could do anything, he got, the Department of Justice said, we'll take it from here. It's a matter of national security. And the people that he was after never got prosecuted. So, corruption, I'm sure, could exist anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, there's always going to be a small town that accidentally stumbles upon someone who's in protective custody under another name. That's happened a lot. Look at the Count Dankula just did that story on those two boys that it's illegal to have their photograph. And
yeah, those two guys. Oh man. What
yeah, but
morons.
like eventually the town stumbles upon this information, and then the government has to step in and say, hey, don't worry about this case. And they're like, what do you fucking mean don't worry about a fucking case? This is a big deal. And they're like, you have no idea who these people are. I mean, this has been going on for the last 50, 70,000 years, right? So, I mean, but, corruption's corruption. Like, go into, what was that drug movie where it was the cop's daughter, and she was doing heroin with a black guy in the city, and he had to track her down. It was Michael Douglas, and his daughter was doing heroin, I think.
Was it a show or a movie?
Movie. It was a drug movie.
A drug movie. I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but they go into that, like, the daughter, at the end of the day, it was his daughter, and like a lot of things got shoved under the rug to hide the fact that his daughter was strung the fuck out, and he was, I think he was over the drug task force. It wasn't Spun, but it was one of those movies around that time where it was like, someone runs up, $20,000 in stolen credit cards, and all of a sudden the case just goes away. And you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, they destroyed a small business in a small town. And they're like, well, that's the governor's daughter, and she's really strung out this year, and she needed money, so fuck your business,
Yeah.
Well, Spez, we didn't talk about space too much. You want to talk about space a little bit?
My bad. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
No. I was just actually gonna say, the whole Finders thing. That's like the holy grail of holy grails.
Well, listen,
Traffic,
that's so it's
Traffic.
so creepy.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about space.
This is
this is
Blackville,
really
right?
good conversation. But yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. As long as you're good to chill, we can keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm totally cool. I love talking about this kind of stuff. But yeah, I was just gonna say the Finders, man, that really, to me, that creeped me out. Like everything that's in there, like all the details and everything. It's like, what in fuck's name were you people doing? And it's all connected to like Washington D.C. And there's tunnels underneath Washington D.C. that they had maps to. And
I've
come
been
on,
in a tunnel under DC.
you
before,
know,
believe it or not. They have
well,
like
I'm sure.
those people
Don't you think-
mover tunnels, but I'm sure if they have them now, they had them back then.
It's still a weird thing for them to have, though. You know, like
In a
that's
fucking
not a normal
preschool?
thing. No,
Yeah,
they
I mean, like,
had.
Well,
Not at the McMartin preschool. McMartin preschool, they found like underneath the playground, and they have maps of this.
Oh, okay.
And they
there you go, Martin's
denied it.
playground.
They denied it that it existed, and they even tried to make a Netflix documentary that tried to spin it like all these kids were just making all this up. And no, it's like no, the kids were telling the truth. And like all the teachers were freaked the fuck out that like, oh my god, like this is big. But like Big Brother stepped in and kind of took over, and they tried to deny the whole thing in the media and everything. They did a number on it. My mom just remembers like that was her red pilling moment, is when like the Department of Justice told her that. But like I never really thought about it. Like maybe that house was connected. Maybe maybe those weirdos were in the area just fucking around, and they chose that area to fuck with some people. So, but
I would make the argument that Finders Cult is something that you could show someone to really kind of help open their eyes. That like there is some stuff going on that it's really hard to put the pieces together, because there are sometimes people actively hiding the puzzle pieces. And here is a really crazy fucking story that the government, and it's crazier to the fact that they admit it, right? Like, what do they have to gain by admitting it? That is what's so fucking weird to me. But like, if you
Again,
don't
imagine
know
like
about the
what.
Finders Cult,
Yeah, imagine. So don't think of it objectively and logically like you're thinking of it. Imagine what it is on a societal level, what their motivation would be for doing something like that. Is it
to make
just
the paranoid
well, I mean,
more
yeah,
paranoid.
like the status,
don't know
keep
what
the
they were
status
doing,
quo
though.
up maybe, or whatever. And again, I wonder what attitudes were like in the 80s. What would you say like the religious makeup of that neighborhood was?
Christian.
And,
All of it was.
and had
yeah.
it gotten
Suburbia, right?
had times gotten progressive enough where there were probably some agnostic people, or was
Not
everybody
really,
pretty
like,
hardcore?
Towards the 90s, like they tried, like the townspeople tried to keep out like Section H8 housing,
Nice.
and they couldn't. And then
Aw.
everybody packed their
Joe,
bags
you're
and
an
left.
asshole.
So that's literally what happened. But yeah, it was like mostly Christian and stuff. Like I'm Catholic, and so was like other people. But like I remember, like we had friends that were neighbors. They were like Lutheran. So yeah, it was pretty mixed. Like Christianity wise, I'd like to think. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, man.
Yeah,
Like,
so
but
that could
after
add
reading all-
to my hallucination theory. I don't know, just you get a bunch of people from the same belief system that believe, that there's a supernatural order to things, whether that be Judeo-Christian or whatever.
Hey, real quick, what city was the Finders Cult? Pick a city.
Well, there was multiple incidences. There was the city park in Florida, like Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, I knew about Florida. What's the closest to Illinois?
Nothing that we're aware of.
Okay, no, I was gonna look at miles, but I remembered Florida. I knew there were others, but I didn't know if there was anything
There was a
close.
string. You have to kind of go through all the documents, and there was like a string of reports. There was like Washington D.C.'s like local like police chief decided to write a little report on what they had thought about the Finders Cult that like lived in Virginia. And that's apparently where the kids came from. I'm like, it's fucked up. Like, they're being ushered into a vehicle at 3 a.m. Neighbors are hearing them cry. You know, they're caught in a park 3 o'clock in the morning too. You know, like in a random park. All the guys are dressed well. They have books on like, you know, how to evade.
I just figured it
know,
was
yeah.
sex tourists that were very well paid guys. It was just a sex tourism that was set up by insert group, you know, and they had some stuff set up, and this was how, you know, if you paid enough money, you could, you know,
Yeah,
fulfill your
it
fantasy.
could have been the stuff too that, like, you know, this is Alex Jones shit, but like, you know, adrenochrome. You know, maybe they were like torturing the kids and like getting their, you know, adrenochrome out of them. Like, we don't
Oh
really
no,
know what they were doing with these kids. We don't, and they went to
because
great
like
lengths to try to hide all that. So
I can say I don't buy into the adrenochrome thing, but it doesn't matter what I believe, right? If
right,
someone believes that and that person has money, that person could try this. Like, it's been proven that the movie Hostel is not fantasy. This does happen. You know, so it doesn't matter what you believe. If someone has money and they want to try something, it can be arranged. Now, my favorite conspiracy is that from Orland Hills to Kenosha is an hour and a half away. What if this was all set up to blow up Kenosha all of these years later? I'm going to run with this one right now.
everything leads back to Kyle Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse
With
is
Jesus.
like the child byproduct. He's gonna become our fucking Rodney King here probably soon. So
Ah, man. All right. Well,
I don't
hey,
think white
let's,
people are gonna stand for Kyle Rittenhouse going to jail.
So yeah, definitely some
Oh,
things
okay,
to
yeah,
look
never mind.
into in the as far as supernatural shit goes. We could you know, I'm gonna look into this and I'm gonna see like what kind of databases exist. But I imagine a lot of this is either lost to time because, you know, what did it go from paper to, you know, floppy disks to CDs and then finally hard drives, and I doubt any of this information is on hard drives anywhere.
They
So
probably have it scanned in, like all the documents
you would
at some point,
hope
and it's probably
if none
you'd
of
think,
them,
but
you know,
it's probably in a
mysteriously burned
giant
down.
it's probably in one of those like Xerox boxes, like with just folder after folder. There's probably like no, actually, it probably takes up a whole storage room. Think about all the documents they had to have, all the plumbers, all this, all that, all the receipts. It has to be probably one of their bigger cases. That's just like, yeah, that thing's a clusterfuck in there.
Well, yeah, and
Good
that
luck.
would
Local
be cool to
newspaper would
know.
have this stuff.
It would be cool to
Yeah,
know
we're-
the internal, either Farmers Insurance or what was it, Packard, I said, what their internal case number is. Because I imagine if you could reference it specifically like that, they wouldn't be asking too many questions. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I need, you know, I need residue report. You just ask for something oddly specific, cite the case number, do it through email, you know, it just, we'll figure some shit out. But anyways, some more
It's
stuff
a
to look
10 and a
into.
half hour drive.
I'm gonna end this stream now real quick. What were you gonna say though, Joe? You're close.
It's 10 and a half hours from my house
10 and a half.
to downtown Orland Hills, which I'm assuming is going to be where the newspaper is. So from my house to downtown Orland Hills is 10 and a half hours. I can save 15 minutes if I pay the tolls, which...
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's not
Dude,
worth
I'll
it.
come. Hey, man, I'm serious. You come into town or anything like that, I'll take you out like to eat, and we can go do whatever the fuck you want.
Do a
So
little
I really
docking.
think
Um,
my...
oh, this
no,
supposed
it
to
might
be
just
child
kill me.
friendly.
yeah, if you seriously do that and just get like a hotel for the night, man, like I'll take you out, get you beers and food and stuff. I'll come meet you down there, and we'll go like look at shit together. I'll
Where's
do
the
that.
So I've heard of the Finders cult, but I haven't done any research on it. But you said it was in what was the place in Florida?
Well, they
I'll
got
send
caught
you
in the
the-
park, but they're
I'll send you the
located
2
in
videos.
Virginia.
I'll send you the videos right now.
Oh,
It's-
okay, cool.
Flo, have you not seen that before?
Ah,
It's
man,
3.5
I've
hours.
looked into so many things.
Just listening at least to the first part of the Medicare, that's the most important. And he does a
good.
really
Okay,
good
yeah, I've
job
been-
of summing everything up. He's such a solid broadcaster on certain things. Man, he summed up Worski's aim or whatever the hell that was. Like, he did a good job on that. That was so
He
great.
did.
And but he did an amazing job with the Finders Cult, and he points out the whole McMartin connection and the preschool. And look that shit up, dude. The McMartin preschool, man, that was fucked up.
Well,
But
yeah,
That's the one that
Bibble
scared me.
has
That's
a
the one that
BitChute
scared me.
yeah,
called
that
the
was
B
weird. And
Files. That's a
all
good
those
one.
kids said they were like brought underground, and they had stuff, and like some kids don't remember everything, and it's just like, oh my god, like what in the fuck? So
All I know is if you have kids, pay attention to your fucking kids. Like, I can't imagine that you could find yourself in a situation like this if you paid attention to your kids. It's like that shit from
No.
the Atlanta child murders or whatever. Do you know where your kids are? Like, that type of shit.
What
You had to ask parents. I mean, now you can just GPS track the little pieces of shit if you need to. But
What happened in Atlanta?
you don't know about you guys giving me shit about the Finders cult, and you don't know about the Atlanta child murders.
well, which ones are you talking about? The one where they couldn't figure out who was doing them for years or something?
Yeah,
Were they
and
black?
then-
Was
yeah,
it the black one? Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that. And then they thought it was like that one
Wayne
black dude with
Williams,
the
they
glasses.
thought it was
Yeah, I
Wayne
remember. I
Williams.
remember.
I think
I
it was.
saw the whole thing.
Yeah, I think it was, in my opinion. I don't know
Yeah,
that
because
did
he was
every single
reporting
one.
on it, wasn't he? He was doing a radio show and he was always talking about it. And then the cops started looking in his direction.
No, he was a talent scout. Oh wait.
Oh,
No, yeah,
Real
he
quick,
was a
can we
talent
appreciate
scout.
the point that we found out about the Finders during Epstein? Like, I really thought the world was going to end for about a month. You know what I mean? We're
Okay,
following Epstein. The Finders comes out. I'm like, the world's going to end. This is it.
That's it for
Yeah.
On the Load 22. The Epstein connection. Flow Euphoria on everything. Take it easy. And the Kiwi Farms, apparently.